Hello everyone, my name is Eric Misalowski, and in this tutorial we're going to be continuing the 101 series by taking a look at texture coordinates, also known as UV coordinates. Texture coordinates are basically the way that an image or texture is wrapped around a 3D surface. So what we're going to take a look at today is the introduction to setting up those texture coordinates ourselves so we can modify and adjust how an image appears on our object. So let's get started. If you open up 3D Studio Max and create a simple sphere in your scene, then open up the material editor by pressing M on your keyboard. Then in your material editor, go to Get Material. From our browser, choose Material Library. Let's turn on our thumbnails. And let us choose a good brick texture. So let's just say this red one here. Double click on it, and then click on the material slot and bring it over to our sphere. Now by default, 3D Studio Max primitives have texture coordinates already set up for them. If we look at our options for creating a sphere, you'll notice at the bottom we have Generate Mapping Coordinates. These are texture coordinates or UV coordinates. Can be called many different things. So, since that's by default, that's true for all of these primitives. Now, what happens if we modify this, or say we don't want the brick texture to show up in this way? What we can do is we can apply a UVW Map Modifier. So if we go to our modifier list and go all the way to the bottom to UVW Map, click on that, and let's take a look at some of the options that we get. Now the way that this works, this is called projection mapping. You can think of this as kind of like a projector in a room. So right now, we're projecting in a planar fashion. So this rectangle here could be thought of as the image coming from the projector. And just as if like you held up something with a curved surface in front of a real projector, you'd get stretching on the side as the image goes around. So that's what's happening here along the equator. Now the idea with using UVW mapping modifier is that to first choose the shape that best fits your object. Now let's just say we take a look at a cylinder, so you can see that it wraps around, but we get some nasty artifacts at the top. We can choose cap, and what that actually does is it does a cylindrical mapping around, and then for the top faces it chooses planar. So it basically adds two of these together to get this final result. Still, it doesn't match up quite right. Now since we have a sphere, spherical is a pretty easy choice, but let's just continue to take a look at some of the others. Here is shrink wrap. It's as if you took the image and draped it over and pulled it towards one of the poles. So you can see how it's all stretching down to this single area. Next from that is box. And box puts planar projection in each direction. Now one thing you should be aware of is that this mode is actually, like, it doesn't point them all in the same direction. So like if I sign this material with a really noticeable image to it, notice all those are going up, going up, going up, and then it has to choose one direction or the other for the top. So it's very difficult to get textures to line up perfectly when using the box projection method. After that is face, and what face will do is it'll take your texture and apply it once for each face. And then finally, XYZ to UVW, it takes the XY coordinates of your object and converts them to the UV coordinates, or the texture coordinates, which, to tell you the truth, I really haven't used all that much or found much use for them. So basically we have UV and W coordinates. U can be kind of thought as the X value, or like if we take a look at an image, U is going over from left to right. V is kind of like the vertical axis, and so that goes up and down. And then W is for depth. And so usually only procedural textures that you generate, like noise or the checker pattern, or I believe wood is a 3D procedural, only those will actually have a W component that you can actually make use of. Okay, so what we can do is let's just jump right back up to planar, just to make it nice and clear for what we're doing with it. Okay, now if we scroll down a little bit, we'll see three areas, U, V, and W. We can click and drag on these spinners to adjust the tiling of our texture. So we can make it larger and smaller, and you'll notice that nothing happens with W. That's because we only have a 2D texture. Okay, now in addition to modifying the values with these spinners or clicking on the flip options, what we can also do is we can get access to the actual projection plane, or the projection gizmo in this case. Now you'll notice that there's an orange rectangle around the object here. This is a gizmo in 3D Studio Max. It basically gives a user some visual reference on how a modifier is being applied. So if we click on the little plus sign next to UVW mapping, you see we have a sub-object here. If we click on Gizmo, you can see that it turns yellow. It basically turns the gizmo into an object that we can now freely move, rotate, or scale. Now if you'll notice, see, nothing's happening to the object itself. Only the texture coordinates are changing, or how the image is wrapped on the surface. And to get out of it, we just click on the yellow. Okay, there are also a couple other quick fit options down here. So if, say, when you apply the planar mapping, it's not facing the right direction, you can quickly toggle between the various axes. For alignment, you can quickly adjust them with the manipulate on. You can also fit, which will try to fit the rectangle exactly around the sphere. You can center it if it's not centered. So let's just drag it off to the side. Center. Now one thing that is particularly useful, especially when you're coming from photo references, is the Bitmap Fit. What this will do is it'll take the aspect ratio of the bitmap that we chose and use that to set up our projection plane. So let's just make this fairly large. Now if we go to Bitmap Fit and we choose the exact same material that we used, it will then take this aspect ratio and make our gizmo fit that. So you can see what it looks like now, and then when I click open, notice how it snaps it to that size. So this is great for, say you have some foliage, like a picture of a plant or something, and you want to slap it onto a plane and populate your scene with it. Common technique for putting in a lot of plant life in a scene. what you can do is, if your picture is accurate, you can just do a bitmap fit so that you know that your plant in your 3D world won't be squashed or stretched or anything like that. Okay, so this is a very, very quick introduction to UV coordinates. In the next tutorial, we're going to be looking at how we can get in even deeper and actually modify the individual coordinates instead of doing these global or large strokes. What I'd like you guys to do is go to the file that comes with this tutorial. This is kind of like a little puzzle. And what I'd like you to do is I'd just like you to select the centerpiece, go over to the Modify panel, and then try to match up this centerpiece with the border. Okay? Just by modifying the UV mapping coordinates. So either by going into Gizmo and trying to rotate it and lining it up, scaling it, or doing whatever you have to get them all lined up. Okay? Alright, thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or post on the forums. Thanks a lot.